Hello and welcome to the IT Lab, where I build and test IT solutions. In today's lab, I combine Autopilot, Intune, and Defender for Endpoint to create a secure kiosk device used for accessing cloud documents as well as browsing the internet on Wi-Fi. Oh, and I'll throw in printing as well, using the Win32 app that I tested in a previous lab. If you watch till the end, I'll show you some additional tweaks to fix some security problems I found. This is a complete solution that could be used by hot desking staff or outside partners visiting your office. My goal for this lab is to make the kiosk easy to provision, configure and support, while securing the device, locking it down and blocking inappropriate internet usage. The last thing I need is someone watching or doing something on the internet that might get them fired. To provision the kiosk, you'll need a user with an E3 or E5 license to initially log in to the device. My user has an E3 license, which includes the Defender for Endpoint, Entra ID and Intune Plan 1 licenses. To get up and running with this lab, I logged into the Intune Admin Center and created a dynamic device group which I'll assign to policies that will configure the kiosk. I also used a group tag to dynamically add devices to this group while using this membership rule. I chose the name Kiosk User Driven, but you can choose whatever makes sense for your deployment. Next, I used the Get Windows Autopilot info script to add a test device to Autopilot and included the Kiosk User Driven group tag. You can check out some of my other Intune labs to see how I did this. In Intune, I verified that the device was listed correctly. When the device group next evaluates its rule, my test device should get added as a member. At this stage, I had a test device added to Autopilot and a dynamic group with a group tag based rule. Next, I created a user-driven Autopilot profile. I used a user-driven profile because a licensed user needs to be associated with this device. Also note that I gave the device a name prefix of Kiosk, which I'll use to get my device added to a machine group in Defender for Endpoint. More on that later. Lastly, I assigned the profile to my device group. The next thing to set up was an update ring specifically tweaked for kiosks. I made the assumption that kiosks in general are left powered on all the time, so I configured this update ring to receive Windows updates overnight, in a timely manner and on the general availability channel. Like all the policies and profiles in this lab, I assigned this update ring to my device group. Now let's take a slight detour for a second and talk about the baseline security policy for Intune devices. It's applied by default to all devices, but unfortunately can clash with other configuration policies and cause them to fail. What a mess, especially when there's lots of policy clashes. Case in point, the kiosk policy I'll be configuring next causes a policy clash because I set the kiosk to auto login, which means the policy will create a local user with a blank password. The clash? As soon as the baseline security policy kicks in, it makes some registry changes and blocks the use of blank passwords, and ultimately breaks the kiosk solution. In a logical world, I would simply duplicate the baseline security policy and remove the bits I don't need and apply this to my kiosk devices. In the world of Microsoft, however, when I tried this, no matter which bits of the policy I tweaked, auto login failed. For this reason, in this lab, I'm going to recommend excluding the policy altogether by adding the kiosk device group to the excluded groups section. With that out of the way, I turn my attention to configuring the kiosk profile, which will lock down the device to a single app. This policy can be created by choosing the templates option and then by searching for kiosk. Here's the policy I set up, which I assigned to the kiosk device group and set it to open in full screen single app mode, which is the Edge browser. And as mentioned earlier, I also chose the auto login option. As part of the planning for this lab, I discovered that multiple tabs are open if URLs are separated with a space, so that's what I did here. The first URL will allow users to work on all the apps available in Microsoft 365, like Word, SharePoint, and Outlook. The second URL is just a Kiosk test page, and the third URL is top secret. No, not really. It's there so I can show you how to handle restrictions for downloads on the Kiosk. More on that later. For those wondering, the In Private Browser option enforces security and safety by deleting all history when the user logs out. For the maintenance window, I set it to daily in case the browser needs to restart after an update. I now moved on to the Wi-Fi requirement by configuring another policy, which, if you haven't guessed, is another template policy. In the policy I created, I specified the Wi-Fi SSID, gave it a friendly name that end users will see, chose to connect automatically when in range so that users won't have to connect manually, and finally set the Wi-Fi security type and the password. So far, so good. The baseline security policy has been excluded and the Kiosk and Wi-Fi policies are in place. It was now time to configure Defender for Endpoint so that I could configure web filtering for the Kiosk. In the Intune Security Setup menu, I was able to turn on Defender for Endpoint because I had the Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 license. When doing this for the first time, it can take a bit of time, so it's best to wait until the connection status shows as enabled. To make things easier for us, Defender for Endpoint automatically creates a detection and response configuration profile, which pushes out the Defender for Endpoint connector to all devices. Effectively, all devices are now monitored by Defender for Endpoint without any further configuration needed. Back in the Security Portal, Settings, and then Endpoints, I created a machine group named Kiosk Devices. I set two rules to match devices which start with the word Kiosk and have an operating system of Windows 11. If you recall, earlier in the Autopilot profile, I set a prefix of Kiosk for the computer name. It pays to think ahead, you know. Still in the settings menu, I set up a web filtering policy, which is category based and managed by Microsoft, and I assigned this policy to the machine group that I just created. Any websites browsed on Kiosk devices that are members of this machine group will be filtered to check for enabled categories and blocked if they match. As with any category-based filtering system, you need to test and tweak the categories to meet your needs. I then sat around for a bit, not because I'm lazy, but because Defender can take a while before it realizes that there's devices it needs to protect. Anyway, after waiting, I plugged in a network cable on my test device and turned it on. The provisioning process picked up the Autopilot profile, and when prompted, I logged in as my standard user. Intune then went through applying the policies I created earlier, and once the process was complete, if all went well, the device would auto-login and the Edge browser would appear in full screen mode. All did go well, and the three tabs opened with the Microsoft 365 screen, my test kiosk page, and the download page. I now wanted to test the Wi-Fi, so I unplugged the network cable and confirmed the Wi-Fi auto-connected and verified it had the friendly connection name. I now checked if the web filtering was working by visiting some dodgy websites and found that they were blocked by Defender for Endpoint, and to prove it, here's the reporting section of the Defender portal under Web Protection. I get a summary of the websites visited and blocked, and I can get more detail about the categories, including the website domains. These reports are useful for monitoring kiosk usage, and if I look further in machine groups, I can also identify which machines were used to access the websites. At the start of this lab, I promised that printing would be included as well, and as promised, there's the printer. I set this up using the Win32app, and if you're interested in how I did that, check the lab linked in the description. Also at the start of the lab, I mentioned security issues I found, and it started with the printer. I noticed that print to PDF is enabled by default on Windows 11. Considering this is a Kiosk device, the underlying operating system, including the local drive, shouldn't be accessible. But guess what? With print to PDF, both are. Another thing I found was that I could download files. And although I couldn't open the File Explorer dialog window or install anything without a valid login, I winced nevertheless at this security failure. The fix, however, was simple and comprised of 2 changes. Change 1, I added a one-liner to the PowerShell install script for the printer and disabled the print to PDF feature. Change 2, I added a new device policy to configure Edge to block all downloads, and for good measure I disabled the browser from showing any file dialogues. Once these changes were applied, the print to PDF issue was resolved and all downloads were blocked in Edge. Wow, this lab had quite a few elements within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem that work together, and hopefully you found this video simplifies how it all works and how you can start using it in your organization. Tell me what you think in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a like, it really helps to grow my channel and motivates me to create more videos like this. Anyway, I'll see you next time.